Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be giving you all of my thoughts on these new products from Dior. I have the Star Filter, I have one of the Liquid Blush Glow Combination Maximizers, and I have three shades of the new limited edition bronzers. So if you want to see all of these products in action, hear all of my thoughts on these products that I've been trying out over the past few days, as well as see some comparisons to existing products that might be similar that you might already have and potentially save some money, then keep watching. Okay, so Dior dropped a huge bunch of new products all at the same time. They seem to drop the Star Filters and the Luminizers everywhere at the same time, but for some reason, and for like the first time in a century, the UK got these limited edition bronzers as part of this launch when they were rumoured to be like more of a summer or at least a spring launch. So we seem to have got these early. I'm sure they will be in the US any day now, but the positive note of them not being available everywhere yet is you get to hear my thoughts and see all the swatches and make your decisions and have a cooling off period before you jump right in, because these were not what I expected them to be. So let's have a look at all of these products. So first up we have the Dior Forever Glow Star Filter. This is available in 10 shades and will set you back £45 or $55 for 30 mils. I got shade 2, which is actually the third shade because there is a 0, so 0, 1, 2. This is the third shade that I chose. And this is described by Dior as a hybrid of skincare and makeup. This fluid delivers 24 hours of hydration and it is multi-purpose. It can be worn on bare skin to just bring out a glow to the skin. It can be mixed with or applied underneath foundation as like a primer or to give foundations a glowy boost. And it can also be used as a highlighter, a liquid highlighter on top of foundation. 94% natural origin ingredients infused with iris extract, the signature skincare ingredient for Dior Forever face makeup. So for me, this very much feels like Dior's answer to Charlotte Tilbury's Hollywood Flawless Filter, but it is different. After we've done all the applications, I will give you my comparisons to products like that from other brands so you can decide for yourself which might be best for you. If you already own a competitor's version of this product, do you need this one? I'll give you all of that tea after we've tried these products out in action. So next we have these Glow Maximizers. These are available in 6 shades and they will set you back £36 or $45 for 11 mils. I picked up the shade Peachy, and depending on which shade you choose, these could be a highlighter, a blush or a bronzer, or all three. They come with that large doe foot. See there, a bit of a subtle amount of colour, quite a soft peachy highlighter on me. There it is blended in, very smooth, thin consistency. And again, as per the brand, this is described as the first Dior Forever liquid highlighter, a true concentration of light in a bottle, brightens and enhances the complexion with a spectacular instant and long-lasting glow. Infused with ultra-fine luminous pearly pigments, it bathes the complexion in a healthy glow that lasts all day. It's fine and fresh, easy to blend texture, fuses seamlessly with the skin to reflect light with a no makeup effect. Its formula is again composed of 92% natural origin ingredients and infused with iris extract to hydrate the skin for 24 hours. A liquid highlighter, highlighting the skin. Intriguing. So again, very much a multitasking product. Depending on your skin tone, these are going to be a highlighter or a blush or a bronzer or all three. This was the one that spoke to me the most, being Peachy. You guys already knew which shade I was going to pick, didn't you? And then we come to these bronzers. I know lots of you are very excited about these. I was very excited myself about these. These are limited edition. You have been warned. They are available in 4 shades and will set you back £53 for 8 grams. We don't have the US dollars price yet because they haven't yet launched in the US. So these are healthy glow bronzers featuring 4 different shades or 4 different products within each. You have a satiny bronzing powder, a matte sculpting powder, a vibrant blush and an illuminating powder infused with flashes of gold like rays of sunlight. They claim to create a truly concentrated healthy glow that naturally revives the complexion like the sun caressing the skin. The intensity of the glow varies based on the amount of powder applied to the skin for an effect ranging from the subtlest to the most luminous. So they're claiming you can sort of build up the amount of glow that you want depending on how much you use and how much you build the product up. It is, despite featuring 4 different products within the compact, it isn't one of these where it's going to be possible unless you're a fairy and you can use, or you know a fairy and you could borrow their makeup brushes. I don't think you're going to be able to separate the products. So I've done a deep look in here with my magnifying spyglass that I keep for such occasions. And here's where I think each of these powders is located. So I think the top and bottom, the largest body of the bronzer is that satiny bronzing powder. That's what I think is up here and down here. The blush is obviously quite clear to see. You can see this is the Peachy bronze shade. You can see the blush, you know, that's easy to spot. The highlighting or illuminating powder is where the lettering is, that middle band across there. The matte sculpting powder, I think, is this tiny band in between the blush and the illuminating powder. So not a chance unless, like I said, you could borrow some fairies makeup brushes. Or, I mean, if you know fairies, I would just get them to do your makeup for you because I imagine they're excellent at it. You're not going to be able to get that sculpting powder on its own. The highlighter you probably could if you were very careful. You could get your highlighting brush in there just about, and there you can see that you get that sheen from just the highlighting powder. But as per Dior's information description on how to use these products, they aren't expecting you to use them separately. They're not expecting you to get a fairy's makeup brush into the blush and the highlighter and the sculpting powder. They are just suggesting that you just whack your brush in there and pick everything up, and it's a one and done multitasking powder. So yeah, you aren't really going to be able to use the products separately. You are just going to whack your brush in there and it should be like a one and done. Bronze, blush, sculpt and highlight in one is the claim. It's bold, but it's a claim. So if you are familiar with Dior's bronzers, their permanent line of bronzers, I have 3 of them and I will do comparison swatches at the end, but their numbering system indicates whether the bronzers are warm or cool. If it has an odd number, so shade 7, it is warm. And if it has an even number, so that's shade 6, and we have shade 4, they are cooler toned bronzers. So that's how Dior's numbering system for their bronzers usually works when it comes to their permanent line. So I thought when I was looking at these that the 2 peachy shades, Peachy Bronze and Coral Bronze, were going to be warm, and then the Rosy Bronze was going to be cool. That was kind of what I decided in my mind, looking at the pictures and the fact that Pink Bronze, so that's the lighter pinky shade, was an even number, and then the 2 peachies were odd numbers, so they're 51 and 31, and then the rosy shade is number 32. Is this making sense to anybody? I'm now just leading you down the garden path. I thought that the pink shades were going to be cool and the coral shades were going to be warm. Let's have a little swatch of them, shall we? So this is shade 32 Pink Bronze, the lightest of the 2 pink shades. There she is. Then we have 31 Coral Bronze, which is the lighter of the 2 peachy shades. And you may have noticed, not only do they look extremely similar, but they both look pretty warm, right? I don't know if there's a lot of difference in warmth between these two or in any way. They look very, very similar. And finally, we have 51 Peachy Bronze, which is the deeper of the peachy shades. Definitely slightly deeper than the other two, but again, they're pretty similar and they all look pretty warm to me. I'm not really seeing anything that's even like neutral leaning. Everything looks quite warm, everything looks quite similar. You can probably see there that swirled all together, you end up with a really nice, warm, sheeny bronzer. There's not much sparkle or shimmer, it's just a glowy bronzer. So the first thing to note before we even get into the demo of these products is you do not need more than one of these bronzers. I picked up 3 for review purposes and I'm so glad I did, because I think a lot of you probably were planning to pick up a couple of these and I don't think that's necessary at all. I think pick the intensity that you would prefer, but I definitely don't think you need more than one of these because I think they all look very similar on the skin. But let's dive into the application and see how these products look and perform on the skin. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Star Glow filter. I picked up the shade 2. I don't think it hugely matters which shade you have in this because it's not got a lot of pigmentation, it's not got coverage. Oh, it's actually got a smidgen of coverage. It's not got a huge amount, so I don't think you need to worry about how perfect the shade is going to be for your skin tone. This one is absolutely fine for me, and I think I'd be able to use this summer and winter. You know, maybe in an ideal world I'd have a deeper shade for summer, and depending on how you wanted to use it, you know, if you wanted to use it to sort of match up your body and your face, which might be a bit lighter like mine in the summer, then you could go with a deeper shade. This to me is like a peachy undertone, I think, which I think it really does do quite a bit of cancelling out of redness. Now, the first time I used this, I put this on bare skin, so I fully used it as a primer, but today I'm applying this on top of my primer. So I used my Tom Ford Soft Matte Primer first, and then I'm going in with the Star filter. And the reason for that is I just found that I was sacrificing a little bit of the smoothness that I usually get from my Tom Ford Soft Matte Primer. Without it, I didn't find that this emphasized texture, but it wasn't doing anything to help it out. And that was definitely something I noticed, that my foundation, my skin just didn't look as smooth as it usually does if I go Tom Ford primer and foundation, using this and then foundation. So that is, you know, what you would expect from a glowy product. So that would be my recommendation. If you're going to use this under your foundation for extra glow, or just on, you know, bare skin like this and go, then I would use a smoothing primer first if you want to have a really smooth look to your skin, because I definitely felt like I just didn't look as smooth without my usual smoothing primer. And like I said, I didn't feel like it emphasized texture, but it wasn't doing anything to help it out either, whereas that Tom Ford primer really helps out my texture. So here is a thin layer of the Star filter, and you can see it's got that gorgeous glow to my skin, and it doesn't look like highlighter all over the face. It looks like gorgeously prepped, hydrated skin, like post-facial skin. It does have a slight fragrance, but it's not overwhelming. It's that sort of skincare lotion luxury scent, like quite fresh. Does feel nice and light, and you can see there this does have a bit of coverage. It's really evened out my redness and evened up my skin tone, and you can build it a little bit. It's obviously not got a, you know, foundation level of coverage, but I would say it's got a sort of sheer to light amount of coverage, and it builds really nicely, and it works really nicely either on top of skincare or on top of the primer like I've worn it today. Nothing fighting, nothing balling up, nothing starts peeling. It looks gorgeous, and this is like, in comparison to the Hollywood Flawless filter from Charlotte Tilbury, I prefer this if I was just going bare skin, because this is giving me a bit of help with redness and discoloration. It's evened up my skin tone a little, but it doesn't look like highlighter all over my face, which is Charlotte Tilbury is like more metallic than this. I've looked really close at this and I can't see any shimmer, any glitter. It just looks like glow, fresh, hydrated skin. Whereas I feel the Hollywood Flawless filter does look like highlighter, like a bit Tin Man. If you're going just with this on the skin and no foundation over the top, this looks more natural and just glowy as opposed to being like shimmery or metallic. So I think this looks really pretty and I would absolutely use this as a sort of quick 5-minute makeup, no makeup product. I think it looks so beautiful. One thing I did notice applying this underneath foundation is that I feel that it slows down the drying down of your foundation. So that's one thing I noticed yesterday when I wore this underneath my Louboutin foundation. When I went in with cheek products, so my bronzer and everything over the top, there was some like disturbing of the foundation that definitely didn't happen before when I wasn't using this, when I was just going primer and foundation. That's never happened with the Louboutin foundation before. So it was like it was slowing it down, drying down. So I needed to be a bit more careful with my cheek products on the top. The second thing I noticed was that the foundation did not wear as well with this underneath it. So that was really interesting, but bearing in mind, I did not go in with a primer that day. I just used this as primer. So again, another argument for using this as kind of a middle step after primer. Use your primer, then this, then foundation, because yeah, I just felt like my foundation broke apart much earlier and started to sort of fade much earlier on my skin over the top of this in comparison to using a traditional primer. So that is definitely one of the cons, but this is what it's looking like all over the face. As you can see, it's not really enhancing my texture and it looks much smoother today over the top of my Tom Ford matte primer than it did yesterday. Yesterday, definitely you could see more of my texture. And like I said, it wasn't emphasizing it, it just wasn't smoothing out or doing me any favors either. Today, I'm getting the smoothness and I'm getting all this gorgeous glow, which I think is beautiful. So I'm going to use my Hourglass foundation over the top today. Again, just like yesterday when I used the Louboutin foundation over the top, this is a more matte foundation. It's not a dead flat matte, but it is a full coverage foundation that has a more matte finish. It's like a sort of modern matte, you know, a natural matte finish, this Hourglass foundation. And the great thing is, because the star filter has taken a lot of my redness and discoloration away and it's toned everything down and evened everything up, I only need to use a little bit of this foundation to be done. You know, I can use a lot less foundation because I'm not trying to cover so much. We've kind of already done a fair bit of the evening out of everything. And the less foundation you use, the more the glow is going to show through the foundation, particularly when you're using something that's quite full coverage like this Hourglass foundation. If you're using a very sheer foundation, it's going to show through more. But using this on top of the Louboutin foundation, which is like the highest coverage foundation I own, very full coverage, you could still see so much glow. I was so amazed because typically these products, you know, if you use them underneath foundation as opposed to mixing them with foundation, you really don't see that the glow is just completely covered. Typically with these products, the only one I've ever found to sort of really give you glow once you've applied a medium coverage foundation is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless filter. This one, I mean, you can see this foundation is not a foundation that is glowy, but you can see how much more glow I've got to my skin for this being underneath. I really found it very successfully added glow underneath even a really high coverage matte foundation. I really loved how this looked. I love how this looks underneath the Hourglass, but I loved how it looked yesterday even more underneath the Louboutin, because that is a more matte foundation, I would say, than the Hourglass. So I'm just going to give this a sec to dry down while I do my concealer. I'm using the Haus Labs. Setting that with my Givenchy powder. Okay, so the star filter now has had a few minutes while I was doing my concealer to dry down. Did you hear my bones cracking? That's 40 for you. And this is what the skin is looking like. So we've definitely got some of that glow still showing through, and it is more subtle once you apply, you know, a matte foundation over the top, but you're still definitely getting that glow and luminosity showing through. And if you used a more sheer foundation, you would get it even more so. So I'm really pleased with how this looks on its own on bare skin with no foundation over the top. I would totally wear it in that way. Also underneath foundation, mixed in with foundation, you know, a matte foundation, something like the Hourglass or the Louboutin, it will add some glow as well. So I do really like how versatile it is. I'm not going to use it as a highlighter today because I want to use this bad boy as like my highlighter and glow in one. Or should I do one side? Let's do that. Let's do one side of each just to cover all the bases and show this product in all the different ways. So I'll do highlighter on this side. I'm just going to pump a teensy bit onto the back of my hand, and then I'm going to use my 109 from BK Beauty, and I'm just going to tap it over the top. And I think this is where the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless filter wins, because it does have that extra metallic quality to it. It is more glowy. It does give you more glow as a highlighter. This is very, very subtle. It's not really giving highlight as such. I haven't powdered my face, just under my eyes, and there's no issues there where it's meeting that powder under my eye. And it is super smooth. Like as a highlighter, it is not emphasizing, easy for you to say, it is not emphasizing texture at all. It is really smooth, really subtle bit of glow. For me, the Charlotte Tilbury is a lot glowier, which I prefer for a highlight. But this is beautiful, very pretty, and very easy to use on top of foundation as well. So that's great. So let's move on to these bronzes. So yesterday I played with the lighter two shades, the pink bronze and the coral bronze, so the lighter pink shade and the lighter peachy shade. So I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you the pinky shade on one side and the deeper coral shade on the other that I haven't used yet, the peachy bronze, which is the deepest peachy shade. So you can see a couple of different colours of the bronzer in action. So I'm going to use my Rephr Holiday brush, and the reason being, yesterday I used my typical Niche Pro Sonia G bronzing brush, which is quite a dense bronzing brush. A lot of the bronzers I use are building up bronzers, you know, you can swirl your brush in and really build up the bronzer, and that's how I kind of prefer. I prefer to go with like a lightly pigmented bronzer and build it up than try and blend out a really pigmented bronzer. This bronzer is quite powdery and lightly pressed. Like, I don't know, dipping my brush in, no. With this softer, lighter, fluffier brush, it hasn't kicked up a lot, but it has still picked up a lot of product. And I found these bronzers really quite pigmented, which I wasn't really expecting. They are quite different to the permanent bronzers, so I wasn't expecting them to be so loosely pressed, so I ended up with a lot of bronzer and then had to work quite hard to like blend it out. So I'm going to use this lighter brush today. I'm going to tap it off and then start bronzing. And this is way better already. This is way more subtle. I'm going to be able to build up from here. And I'm liking this a lot more. Now, as I said, I don't think anyone's going to be able to use these products separately. And as per the information about the product on Dior's website, they aren't intending you to like somehow sculpt, blush and highlight. It is a one and done, all in one product. So they are expecting you just to swirl all of those colours together and use as an all in one product. What I will say is it doesn't look like I've got blush on. It does just look like I've bronzed, and it has that slight luminosity to it, but it also doesn't look like I've highlighted either. So to me, I was kind of a bit disappointed because I was expecting this to be this glowy, blushy bronze, and I think it's just bronzer. So I think that was a slight disappointment. I don't know if I just expected too much. Is that too much to expect? You tell me. Because I think it is a really nice bronzer and I really like this tone. I think they do swatch quite warm, but they are bronzers. You know, I know a lot of us prefer a more neutral, less warm bronzer, but typically bronzers are going to be very warm. That is, you know, what bronzers are designed to do. They are designed to give us warmth to the skin, so they are supposed to be warm. I don't think this is overly warm. I think this is perfect for a typical bronzer. So I've built this up slightly, but not too much. I don't feel like it needs building up. I think this is like the perfect amount of bronze for me. And I think so far, I prefer this shade to the coral bronze. So that's the lighter peachy one. I think I prefer the lighter pink, but let's try the deeper peachy one. So this is peachy bronze. Again, one really light tap in there from a very light fluffy brush, and we could be in trouble. Okay, but let's see how it goes. Okay, it went better than I expected. I mean, the difference today is definitely this brush. You know, this is a really light, fluffy, airy brush, so it is helping me. I think you can, ooh, can you see in there? Quite a bit of kick up from, you know, like I said, a really light, fluffy brush. Okay, I think this is looking really nice. I think this might be my new favourite shade. By the way, I had my doth piercing change, my jewellery changed yesterday, so if you're thinking my ear looks alarmingly red, my ear did not enjoy the process, okay? If you've ever had a doth piercing or like had the jewellery changed, it is not like whacking in a lobe piercing, and it was fuming at me, so don't worry, my ear is fine. It's just a little mad at me right now. Okay, so this is my new favorite, this peachy bronze, which I thought was going to be too deep for me. I literally picked up this shade for comparison purposes to show you guys the differences between the shades, and I didn't really think that I would be able to use this on my skin tone, but I think this is my favorite shade. It looks a little, I don't know, I like the tone of it. Maybe a little more on me than the pinky bronze side. What do you guys think? It's definitely a bit deeper, and bearing in mind if you have a deeper skin tone than me, obviously this shade should work for much deeper skin tones than mine because it is the deepest coral shade. I think the pink shade is the deepest of the four, so this is the third deepest, but to look at it you would think this should work for like tanned skin tones, and I think it will. I'm using it very lightly, but I think you could absolutely build this up and it would work on a much deeper skin tone than mine. You can see how much you could build it up, and it definitely has a bit of a sheen and it definitely runs a little corally, but I think it works. I think that looks really pretty. Ooh, I forgot to mention, these bronzers are powerfully fragranced, okay? So where the Star Filter smells like that skincare scent, these smell like straight up perfume. You know, the Dior blush fragrance, it's that very potent fragrance. I can still lightly smell it in the air now. If fragrance bothers you, don't even consider the bronzers, okay? Thank me later. You'll get a migraine. Now, the Maximizer is somewhere in between. It's not fragrancy. It doesn't smell fragrancy. I don't know if anyone's going to know what I mean when I say this, but this has that sort of green, like grassy smell. Does that make any sense to anybody? So it's not super overpowering of a fragrance. It doesn't smell like perfume. It also doesn't smell like skincare. It's a light, grassy, hay smell. anyone know what I'm talking about? So again, a little bit from the doe foot onto the back of my hand. I've cleaned off my 109 and I'm just going to sort of stamp that into my hand, get that into the brush. You guys know how I feel about liquid products. As always, I'm terrified. But having used this yesterday, I do feel slightly braver today. So the first thing you may notice is this is very subtle. Like, you know, I'm applying this and it does not look like I've suddenly applied blush. It's very subtle. My cheek is definitely much glowier. So we're definitely getting highlight, but on me, we're not really getting blush. You can see where I've blended it in there. It literally is just looking highlight. I'm not really getting much of a blush from it to speak of. But here she is. I mean, it's a gorgeous glow. Really glassy, glowy, smooth skin, glossy. I love it. I think it's so pretty. I really wish I personally, on my skin tone, that this gave me a bit more of a peachy glow, because I think I would just absolutely die for it then. I'm going to try and build it up. This could be a mistake because you know how these sort of liquidy products, sometimes you build them and it's like, oh, no, we're going to now pick all your foundation up and make you look a fool. And if I have to do that and take one for the team, I'd rather it was me than you, you know? So here now you can see we've got some peachiness, but I did have to build a lot, and we'll see as I'm sort of blending this out whether I'm going to live to regret doing that or not. Definitely a lot glowier than the filter. This is much more of a highlighting product. I wonder how this is going to dry down, especially on the side where I've really built that up, because that is looking wet, isn't it? I'm looking soaked over here. I'm not mad about it though. No such thing as too much glow in this house. I mean, it is looking very, very glowy, very wet and very glowy, but it has not disturbed anything underneath, which is miraculous in my book. And you guys know I'm not a professional, I'm an absolute amateur, especially when it comes to applying cream and liquid products. I make an absolute hash of it every time, guaranteed. I've really added a lot here to see what colour we could get, and I think it looks marvellous. I'm going to just go a little bit over the edges with my sponge. That's nailed it. That's perfect. Just toned it down a little, but we've kind of kept that colour. That's a juicy looking peachy cheek, isn't it? Look at my ear. Oh my God. I think this is delightful. I think it's glorious. Again, I still feel like, you know me and blush. I want blush, blush. So I kind of wish it gave me a bit more colour, but I think actually it's super pretty. And this is enough colour, like calm down, okay? Super pretty. I love how everything is looking today. And given that I've gone in with like one of my most matte foundations, I'm glowing to the gods. So I'm pretty happy about it, I won't lie to you. Quick lipstick break and we're back. And you can see really, even though I really built this side up and it was, you know, a lot of illuminating product on my cheek, I still feel like the cheek looking very smooth. I think it's very flattering on texture, super pretty. Oh, some good products in here. Okay, so now I'm going to do some swatches and comparisons to other similar products. Let's start off with the bronzers. So I have 3 shades of the new limited edition bronzers, and I have 3 shades of the permanent existing Dior bronzers. So here are the 3 new bronzers. We have shade 32, that's the lightest pink, and then the 2 peachy shades, 31 and 51. And I'm going to swatch the permanent shades. So I have shade 4, shade 6 and shade 7. So here are the 3 new shades. Again, this is the lightest pink shade 32, and then the 2 peachy shades of the new bronzer. Then we have shade 4, 6 and 7. So this is the warm toned shade that I have from the permanent collection, and then 4 and 6 are the cooler shades. So you can see shade 4 in the permanent line much lighter than anything that we have from these new shades. These are kind of in between, I would say 6 and 7. They're more warm, like shade 7. So I imagine these are all in the ballpark of shade 5, which I don't own, but that's where I would say these sit. Pretty much all 3 of them are really quite similar, aren't they? But the permanent line are all matte, so that's where they differ. Now, I've already kind of given you my thoughts on the comparison about these 2, so the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter and the Dior Glow Star Filter. Quite similar products with similar claims. Some of the differences, the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter has a large doe foot, whereas the Star Filter has a pump, which I prefer. I think it's just easier when you're mixing things together to pump it out rather than having to scrape the doe foot. So I do prefer that. They both have glorious packaging. I don't think there's a winner there. They're both beautiful brands that do beautiful packaging always. There is a slight price difference. The Hollywood Flawless Filter for the same amount of product is £6 less than the Dior Star Filter. So the Charlotte Tilbury is £6 cheaper than the Dior, and it also comes in 2 more shades, 10 shades versus 12. The main difference when it comes to the formula is I find the Charlotte Tilbury is quite a bit more metallic. It leans more towards the highlighter, whereas the Star Filter, I think for me, leans more towards like the glowy primer. So I think the Charlotte Tilbury will give you more glow, whether under foundation, on top or mixed with. So we have shade 4 of the Charlotte Tilbury and then shade 2 of the Dior. And I think you can see the Charlotte Tilbury, the deeper shade, it's way glowier. It's a more metallic sort of product. So I think this really is going to depend, if you're choosing between these 2, what you want to use it for the most. If you're looking for something that you can wear without makeup over the top, without foundation over the top, because this is makeup, but you know what I mean. If you don't want to put foundation over the top, you want a little bit of color correcting, which both of these products give you a little bit of evening up, a little bit of toning down redness, discoloration. Both of these will do that. However, for me and my preference, this is too glowy all over the face without something on top. I look very Tin Man with just this all over my skin, whereas the Dior looks beautiful, glowy and healthy and fresh. So I think this one is better if you're going to use it on its own. If you want to mix with foundation, under foundation, or use as a highlight, the Charlotte Tilbury is going to be the winner for me because it's just that bit more glowy. So you're going to get more from it. And I think you use less of this to achieve what you need with this. So if you're looking to use this mostly on its own, this one I think would be better. If you're using this to use with foundation either underneath, on top, or use it as a highlighter, the Charlotte Tilbury is going to give you more impact in that way. I also wanted to show you this next to the Chanel, which is the limited edition winter healthy glow primer. I have the shade Icy Beige, and this has a squeezy tube, so another different applicator again. This is the most subtle of all of these. If you watched my review, I'm not a big fan of this product because it just really gives me nothing. It doesn't really do any of the things as much as I'd like it to. So if you can see it, I've added the Chanel here, but I mean, you can see very clearly on my hand, it's just way more subtle than the Dior and the Charlotte Tilbury. You can barely make it out, and that was kind of my complaint, that, you know, it's not going to add glow to foundation over the top or even mix in with foundation because it's just not glowy enough. It's too subtle, and it also has quite a bit of visible shimmer in it. So yeah, for me that one doesn't really win in any category. It is thinner and it does feel very hydrating, I'll give it that. It does probably feel the most hydrating of the three. The Charlotte Tilbury, I don't really find it to be hydrating. It doesn't feel heavy or uncomfortable, but it doesn't add hydration to my skin. The Star Filter feels quite hydrating going on, but it's not an effect that I feel throughout the day, whereas the Chanel does feel very hydrating. So that's the one category that the Chanel wins in. But for me, it's not really adding any glow to my skin, but it is adding some shimmer. And then it really isn't amping up glow to foundations, and it doesn't work as a highlighter because it's just too subtle. So for me, that one is a distant third. And then a comparison I thought might be helpful again from Charlotte Tilbury are the Beauty Light ones in comparison to these Glow Maximizers. A similar type of product, both liquid, highlighting, blushing products depending on which shade you choose. And I have the shade Pinkgasm Sunset, which is going to be much darker than this shade, but I thought it would be interesting to see the level of glow. So again, the Beauty Light ones are cheaper, so you do get a mil more. So there's 12 mils in the Beauty Light ones, 11 in here. This packaging is much bougier than the Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light ones, but the Glow Maximizer will set you back £36 versus 30, so this is £6 more for a mil less product. So here is the Charlotte Tilbury Pinkgasm Sunset and then the Dior Peachy shade. Might be hard to tell on camera, I'm not sure, but the Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light ones are quite metallic, and they do these sort of blushy shades, they do have a lot of colour to them. You can see how much more subtle the Dior is, but the Dior is glossy and I feel like more luminous, whereas the Beauty Light ones are more metallic and they have quite a bit more of a glow to them. And the Dior is definitely a thinner texture and consistency. The Charlotte Tilbury is almost more like a creamy liquid, whereas the Dior Maximizer feels much more liquidy and lighter. I love both of these products. I think they're both beautiful. I don't really have a winner. I think it depends what you want it for. You know, these are beautiful as a glassy, glossy highlighter, but they aren't really giving me much blush. And if you have a deeper skin tone, they are just going to be a highlighter. So I think you have more options for shades if you want some colour from the product from the Charlotte Tilbury. Both of these work beautifully. It's just going to come down to little things between, you know, the shade that you want and how much you care about the packaging. Lots of people hate the Charlotte Tilbury little sponge that they have in there. I don't really mind it, but yeah, little nuances between them. This one's definitely more glowy. This one a little more subtle, more glossy. Okay, so that is all of the swatches, information and comparisons that you could possibly need or want or hope or dream of. Probably not, but I did my best, okay? That's all I've got. I have been using these products for the last few days and I feel like I really have my thoughts together on them. I've tried the Star Filter in all different ways under a couple of different foundations, on top of primer, on top of skin, bare skin, highlighter, all of the above. And I think it's a great product. I really, really like it. I think it's very glowy without being shimmery or sparkly, which is hard to find. And I think it looks glorious just on its own, which I really appreciate because again, that's kind of hard to find. Like I said, that I don't get that from the Hollywood Flawless Filter. It's too metallic. This is perfect. Your skin looks glorious just with this on. It does a great job at minimizing redness. I think I would like to pick up another shade of this. I think this would be a great holiday product to take with you to just, you know, give you something on the skin without having to do a full face of makeup. I think it's very flattering and you do actually get some glow through your foundation from it, which I really love. I think as a highlighter, it's not really enough highlight or enough glow for me on top of foundation, but that's not really how I use these products anyway. I would typically prefer to use a glowing blush or a powder highlight anyway. I really, really like it. I think it's beautiful and it definitely is pros and cons between these two. They're very close. I don't think there's a clear winner because they kind of win in different categories. This is the better highlighter. this is the better standalone by itself product. So that's going to come down to personal preferences. I think it's gorgeous. A couple of cons that I mentioned, I felt like my foundation takes longer to dry down on top of it. And I also think it slightly negatively impacted the wear of my foundation. I will keep trying this over the next couple of weeks, and I'll update you once I've tried it with more foundations on different days and different circumstances, so I can really test out exactly what's going on with the wear of foundations, and I will keep you updated in my February roundup. Is that the correct month? I think it is. The Forever Glow Maximizer, I like it. It's not an obsession, a love, a new favorite, because I just wish it had a bit more pigment when it comes to the color. It's a very subtle amount of peachiness, and I did have to really build it up to get that peachy color. I really wanted this to be like the glowiest peachy blush, so I wish it was a little bit more pigmented, but I think it's very easy to use even for a liquid dummy. And I had no issues with it. It's lovely and glowy. It doesn't emphasize texture. It's very, very smooth and light and very pretty. So I think that is a great product. These bronzes, I just feel like you don't need them at the end of the day. I think they're a nice, really warm, luminous bronzer, but I don't think they're as wow factor as I really wished and hoped they'd be. They're not really giving you, well, they aren't giving you blush. They're going to give you a slight luminous bronzer. I don't think they're as exciting in reality as they looked on paper, and I think they look very pretty and aesthetically pleasing, and the description with, oh, it's bronzer and blush and highlighter gets your heart blood pumping, doesn't it? That made me excited. It tickled my pickle. But in reality, it is actually just a bronzer that's got a bit of luminosity to it. They're all very similar to each other in colour, which again is really sad. I really wanted to see a big difference, one in depth between these three shades, so that more people can actually use these, but also more between the pink and the peach. They basically look the same. I think on the skin, you're not going to be able to tell a difference. Whether it's the peachy or the pink blush, I don't think you're getting much of a tone difference, undertone difference. You're not really seeing any blush on the cheeks. So I feel like, one, definitely don't buy more than one. I think the packaging is gorgeous and it's a nice bronzer. It worked nicely and I was happy with how it looked, but I don't think it's crazy wow factor, super stunning. I don't think it's exciting and special as it looks and as it kind of sounds on paper. So I think if you're really expecting like a life-changing wow factor, oh my God, it's giving me bronzer, blush and highlight in one, I think you'll be disappointed. And I also think if you're expecting the pink shades to be cooler toned, because they kind of looked a little bit more cool in the pictures, but they also, just if you're expecting them to follow the Dior number system, maybe there's a slight undertone difference, but they are all very similar, very warm bronzers with a hint of luminosity, and I just don't think they're that exciting in reality. Which is a shame because they look so great on paper, you know? So there you have it. Those are all of my thoughts on all of these new products from Dior. I really hope this was helpful and I answered all your questions in this video. I tried my best, okay? I think I did okay. But thank you so much for watching. I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye, 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 bye.